Hello, welcome to this video. I want to show you how to graph trig functions on your graphing calculator. So if you don't have your own graphing calculator, you need to open a tab to use the free online calculator that the Park NJSLA website offers for you. I'm going to go ahead and use my handheld calculator. And here's how you graph trig functions. You will want to take notes on this. So if you are in period 3, 8, or 6, it's section 4, 5. If you're in period 4, it's 7, 1, 7, 3. Okay, so you can graph trig functions on your graphing calculator. To do that, you go into your y equals and you can graph sine. Now, all of the graphing that we do is in radian mode. So make sure that you're in radian mode. That is the default. So if you're using the online, it always starts you off in radians. Be very careful if you're taking physics this year because you go back and forth between radians and degrees. For us, for graphing, it's always going to be radians. Okay? And our usual window is zoom standard. So I'm going to go to zoom 6 and I get zoom standard. And there's my sine graph. There's the y-intercept at 0, 0, goes up to the right, down to the left. Looks pretty good. All right, so there's a whole video on it because there's a little more to it and there's some things we have to be careful of. So first thing to consider here, it's really not an appropriate viewing window. This goes down to -10 and up to +10. This goes out to -10, out to +10. It's not at all like the graph paper that we've been using. Our graph paper usually goes up to like 4 and down to -4 because even if we do vertical shifts, we really, or stretches and shrinks, we really don't need to go up to 10 and -10. So we can make that adjustment and bring this in. Also, on the x-axis, think about the graph paper we use. Our x-axis, we always like tick marks at pi/2 and pi and 3pi/2 and 2 pi. These are 1 apart. So these are not clearly indicating where the critical values are. So what we can do is we could go in and do all this by hand, but we don't have to. So if we go to zoom, there's zoom trig. That's option 7. So you can scroll down to 7 and hit enter, or if you guys didn't know this, when you hit zoom, you can just hit the number 7 and it'll select that one for you. So what you want to take notes on so far, there's our nice graph. What you want to take notes on so far is that you want to be in radian mode and it's zoom trig. And that might honestly be all you end up writing down about graphing in the calculator. All right, but you do want to get that into your notebook so you don't forget. So taking a look, this sets our window so that it goes up to 4 and down to -4. If you have the newer color graphing calculator, yours might look a little different. Don't panic. Okay. Check that out. So if you have an older calculator, if you have a newer calculator, it's going to look more like that. Let me see if I can adjust the lighting. Yeah, that's okay. Just move that down to reduce the glare. Okay. So if you have the older graphing calculator, you go up to 4, down to -4. Your tick marks are at pi/2, pi, 3pi/2, and 2 pi. And if you look at your window, that's basically what it says. Now, for your X max, I wish they just went to 2 pi. Like, I just wish they went to 6.28. They fall just a little bit short. So it's almost 2 pi, almost -2 pi. I really don't know why they designed it like that. Close enough. And then for your scale on your x-axis, check out that 1.57. Well, 1.57 is pi/2. That's what makes that pi, and 3pi/2, and so on. And then for your y's, you're going from -4 to 4, counting by 1. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's a very, very nice viewing window. If you have the newer color graphing calculator, your window's extended a little bit further, no big deal. All right, so when we take a look at the window, it goes out to -8.6 and 8.6, but it still counts by 1.57 on the x-axis. So that's still pi/2 and pi and 3pi/2 and so on. And then 2 pi, and then that would be 5pi/2. So it extends a little further out, but the y-axis is the same as the one on the other calculator from -4 to 4. If on the newer graphing calculator, if it bothers you that you're seeing more than normal, because we're used to seeing from -2 pi to +2 pi, after you hit zoom and select zoom trig, the 7th option, you can always go into your window and make the adjustment. So once it finishes graphing, I'll show you that. Okay, so you can always go in here and change this to -2 pi. No big deal. When you change it to -2 pi, make sure you're using the negative button underneath the 3, not the minus operation. When I move my cursor down, it's going to change to the decimal form. That's okay. Just what it does. All right. And then you'll have a matching graph if it bothered you. If it didn't bother you, just stick with zoom trig. Just realize that you're not looking at our usual window that goes from negative 2 pi to positive 2 pi. Okay, so there's the graph of sine. If we want to graph cosine, we can do that. Ooh, okay, y-intercept at 1, just like we expect, has a hill in the middle. It's a nice even function because it's symmetric with respect to the y-axis. We can do transformations. So if I want to do 2 cosine x and then like a plus, I don't know, 1, the calculator will do the vertical stretch and move the graph up 1. And if I want to graph sine instead, and let's say that I want a 0.3 out front, and instead of moving up 1, let's say that I want to go, I don't know, pi to the right. So let me get rid of that too. It doesn't really matter. Just making up an equation anyway. But this will do a vertical shrink to give an amplitude of 1/3, or I'm sorry, not 1/3, 0.3, which is 3/10. And this will do a horizontal shift pi to the right. And the calculator will just do that for you. Now, again, it looks funny right now because it's a vertical shrink, remember. So the amplitude is teeny tiny. The amplitude is 0.3. All right. So you can graph your transformations as well. Let me go back to just regular sine because there's just a little bit more to talk about. I want to remind you that we are graphing in radian mode only in our course. You can graph in degrees. So if I switch over to degrees, the calculator can still graph that. Let me show you. Okay, now it looks kind of funny. It's barely there. That's because our mode is degrees, but our window is still in radians. Okay, so here's what we can do. We can hit zoom and select zoom trig again. And since my calculator is set to degree mode, the calculator will now graph using an appropriate window for degrees. So if you look at the window, it's going from almost negative 360 to positive 360, almost. And it's counting by 90 because that's where your quadrant angles are. So now that's 90, 180, 270, 360. So I just wanted to show you, you can graph in degrees. We just don't in this class. We only graph in radians because that's what you're going to be using exclusively when you're in calculus next year. You're really not going to see degrees next year. So let's set it back to radians. Okay, check this out. I'm going to hit graph. Okay, so what's happening now is we're getting a weird looking graph. That's because we have a disagreement again between the window and the mode. So if you look at the mode is radians, but if you go to the window, it's still in degrees. So you have to be careful here. And that's, aside from it's kind of interesting to see that we can graph in degrees, I want to reinforce that you have to be careful that your mode matches your window. So what you always want to do is set your mode first and then go to zoom trig. So if you set your mode first and then hit zoom trig, you'll be fine. All right. So especially for the people taking physics this year, just be very careful because you might be going back and forth from degrees and radians. So make sure that your mode, which is radians, matches your window, which is radians, and you're good to go. All right. Thanks for watching.